What's going on, guys, and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be talking about how I beat my hair algae problem. Now the tank looks pretty good right now, dealing with some other issues like always. You know how it goes with a reef tank if you've had one, but I'm gonna go ahead and insert right here a little clip of the tank during its peak algae bloom. Now if you've been following me for a while, you'll know that I had tons of coral in here, really nice stuff, and it all started going downhill from this hair algae bloom. So while hair algae is not technically bad all in itself, it can create a problem when it comes to the health and progress of your coral. Essentially what will happen is the algae will grow all over the rocks. It will start to stifle out some of the coral. They won't be able to get their polyps out. It will start blocking off their ability to access light, and then they will slowly perish away. So I just want you guys to know that this is beatable. You do not need to black out your tank. You do not need to start over. Now, I will be 100% honest. When I started this battle, I thought many times this was gonna be it. I was gonna shut this tank down and I was gonna go and try something else. But I just want you guys to know that it is definitely beatable. So step one with algae. I'm specifically targeting hair algae here, guys. So just bear with me. Step one is identifying what algae you have. Now there are many ways to do that. You can identify it yourself with microscopes, or you can go ahead and contact some reefers that have some experience with it, look up some pictures. But I knew it was hair algae because I knew I wasn't water testing and I wasn't at that point. And I double checked with some pictures, verified with some people, and I was able to identify it as hair algae. So step one is identifying what type of algae you have. Step two, I went ahead and started water testing. This was the most important part. You need to find out what you're up against, and the water testing isn't necessarily to know what's wrong, because generally when you have hair algae, your main issue is phosphates. You want to be targeting phosphates and trying to reduce that. So without even testing, that is what you're going to be targeting the most. Secondly, you're going to target nitrates, but we're going to start with phosphates. So I would pick up a phosphate test kit, preferably one from Hannah. They're just a little bit more accurate if you use them correctly. And you can get an exact number of what your phosphates are at, and then you can go ahead and test daily to achieve a number that is appropriate for the tank. Now you want to keep your phosphates below 0.2. 0.2 is the max you want them at if you're keeping a reef tank, especially if you're keeping SPS. So go ahead and pick up a reputable test kit and test for phosphates. See what number you're at, and then target a number less than 0.2. If you really want to get rid of your hair algae, I would target 0. Try and get 0.00, and you can start over from there. But if you have a fully established reef tank, I would start at anything between 0.0 or 0.1 and 0.15. I would stay around those numbers. That way you don't shock your coral too bad with a lack of nutrients. So yeah, so that was the first thing I did. I picked up a Hannah phosphate checker. I'm going to show you that right now. So when you get it, it'll come in a case like this, and essentially this is what it looks like, and you get reagent. All right, yeah guys, so step one is using a trusty test kit. Go ahead, test your nutrient levels for phosphates, see what you're currently at, and that will help you target a number below 0.2. Step two, try to target the reason you think for high phosphates. Now there are a couple situations in which certain behaviors can cause your tank to exhibit high phosphates. One of the two main reasons people generally have phosphates are overfeeding, and two, there is nothing to take those phosphates out. Maybe you're not doing adequate water changes. But there could also be other reasons, like if you have a refugium, maybe your algae is dying off, maybe you have too much detritus in your system, maybe you just need to restart your refugium. Other reasons can be situations in where you possibly have filter socks that you haven't changed in a while. I had issues like that. I had all those issues, and that's why I am bringing them up. Or you're just lacking the beneficial bacteria or the quantity of surface area for the beneficial bacteria to populate and to be able to remove those phosphates. So if you target those things, clean your filter socks or change your filter media, try to remove as much detritus out of your system as possible, create more surface area for biological bacteria to populate, and lower your feeding habits, feed less times a day, or get a better quality food. Things like that will help you target lowering your phosphates. Now, step 3, after you have identified those situations, you need to find a way to lower your phosphates. So I did everything. I essentially picked up a product called Phosphate E. It's by Brightwell. Now I have it sitting behind my tank, so I can't show you, and I believe I threw away the smaller bottle that I had. But pick up this item, Phosphate E by Brightwell Aquatics, and it will help with removing the phosphates out of your tank. So I started dosing that through a dosing pump. I just bought a cheap J-Bow dosing pump, and I calibrated it, and then I started dosing that. And immediately that started bringing my phosphates down. Now the downside to something like this is that you got to purchase them, and they can get pricey. But if you buy the big, I believe it comes in maybe 1.5 gallon or 2 gallon bottle, I would just buy the big one, set it up, and you should have no issues there. Don't overdo it. Start off slow and start dosing a little at a time until you get your phosphates to the 0 number. 0.00 is what you're looking for. So that was step 1 for me. And step 2, I went ahead, I reset my entire refugium. I took out all of my media, I dumped it out. I literally took my entire sump off my system. I sprayed it down, I washed it out, and I went from there and started over. And then I did water changes, and I also picked up a product called Reflux. This thing right here. This thing works real wonders, and especially if you have already targeted the issues, this product right here will definitely help you in expediting your process. So I was already doing well with getting rid of the hair algae. I already had some hair algae die off, and I already had phosphates 0.00. I'd already changed out all my filter socks, filter media, changed out all of, cleaned out my refugium, started that over. I had already done all of that. But the problem was that it just took forever because, I still had fish, I still had to feed, and I knew I didn't want to do a blackout because I still had coral in here. And so I knew a blackout just wasn't the right thing for me. So I went ahead and used the Reflux. I wouldn't suggest you do what I did. I went ahead and did a double dosage. This is probably a 70-gallon system, but I should have went with the recommended amount of capsules for my tank, which is, it says the recommended dosage is 1 capsule for every 10 gallons. So theoretically, yes, I would have needed 7 capsules, but if I would have done it again, I would have started with 5, and then I would have went down from there, because I do think overdoing that, you can overdo anything. So I think I kind of overdid it a little bit and threw my tank out of whack, and I lost some really nice coral. So I wouldn't say that there are no effects to reflux. I would say there are some, but you just got to be careful in utilizing the product. Try to stick with what they recommend, or even half it, and if that doesn't work, then go to a recommended number. So reflux, pick that up, add it to your tank, follow the directions, turn off your skimmer for 3 days, I believe. I did 4, and run your tank, I think it's 3 weeks, and then do a big water change. I didn't really do the water change right away. I kind of let it sit in there longer because, you know, I felt like it was working a bit slow for me. I'm a little impatient sometimes, so I left it in there for, I don't know, maybe 4 weeks. And then kind of something happened that forced me to do a water change. So I really wasn't even planning on doing one, but something kind of forced me to do one, and I ended up doing one. Now, the problem is with all that algae die-off, you need the phosphate E, because when this algae dies off, you will have nothing to be able to remove those phosphates that are then being released by the algae dying off. See, it's a two-way street. The algae actually helps consume phosphates, and that's why it's growing so rampantly. However, if the algae then dies off, it will re-release those phosphates back into your system. So it helps the cycle start over. So you need to find a way, either through water changes or a product that will help you deal with that. Now, I kind of did both. I did the phosphate E, which I'm still currently dosing, and then I went ahead and did a big water change. So you have to remember that this algae is constantly consuming phosphates, but if it dies, which is what the reflux does, and which is what lowering your phosphates does, then it will start to re-release those phosphates back into your system. So in combination with the reflux, I would definitely suggest that you guys use Phosphate E by Brightwell Aquatics. So that happened, I did that, and I started to see them die off quite a bit. But, it's still, there was a lot of white, fuzzy algae still all over my rocks, and it was still very unpleasing to see. And I kind of just let it be. And surprisingly, one day I came down and I was so surprised, because I check on my tank every single day, as I'm sure most of you do. But I came down and there was no algae. It was pretty much all gone. My rocks were white again. So I went ahead and I took a pipette. I started blowing stuff off. I added some water flow to the tank in the form of 2 CP25s. I had one already. I added a second, and then I tried to blow up and send that excess detritus and dying off hair algae to my mechanical filtration system. So I just want you guys to know it takes a lot of patience. Yes, you can always restart your tank, but the way I look at it is, why not learn how to do it? Because what if you have a 100-gallon system? You really want to take the time to restart a 100-gallon system. Or if you have a ton of coral, you really want to take the time to restart all of that. It's just not very practical, in my opinion, not monetarily and not in the sense of time. So just go ahead and try these methods out. I can't promise you anything, but I guarantee you will see a difference. If not, get rid of all your hair algae. Now, why did I end up having hair algae? And I really don't know. I believe what happened was I moved a couple months before this, and I think I probably had a lot of bacteria die off. And when I had a certain amount of fish in here, because I love fish, I started just kind of having excess nutrients, and without the biological bacteria to take care of it, I ended up with high phosphate issues. So I think that's where it stemmed from, because at my apartment where I had the tank prior, I never had any issues with phosphates. So I don't really know. I didn't have any hair algae issues. My coral were all doing really fine. So I'm assuming that's probably the main reason for these phosphate and hair algae issues. So yeah, try those methods out, guys. I just wanted to let you guys know what worked for me. And as you can see, I'll give you guys a close-up. There is no hair algae left in the system. My rocks are looking great. Now there are other issues with the tank, which I am addressing. Just trying to address them by learning. just take time to learn, guys. That's the best way I can put this hobby. It's very, very frustrating. And like my good buddy Jim, you can find him on Instagram at Telegram, always says, you know, he's one mistake away from killing everything. And so I was really humbled by that statement, because even, you know, a really advanced reefer such as he is even humbled enough to say, hey man, right now it's what I'm doing is working, but I'm one mistake away from killing it all. So definitely, guys, you know, take your time to learn. You know, learn as much as you can, and the more you emulate a good reefer, the more you learn what works for you. So thank you guys for watching the video. As always, have a good one.